Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for this week's edition of Inside the Zone alongside Blake Sebring of the News Sentinel. I'm Glenn Marini, and the Komets saving themselves with a nice 20 minutes to wrap up the weekend. A victory, come-from-behind victory, over Toledo on Saturday night. They lost to Elmira on Friday. And Blake, your overall impression of the weekend, what was it?
Well, it's like we talked about last week, Glenn. Toledo's faster, the Komets are bigger. They have to play gritty or greasy. They have to go to the net. And they did that in the third period finally, and that really paid off.
As far as the Komets go, Elmira, they come out in the first 2 minutes and 10 seconds. C.J. Severin, who's played really well the last week and a half, gets a goal, and then they don't score the rest of the game. How concerning is that if you're Gary Graham and the rest of the Komets, that your offense can be limited? Elmira's a decent team, but still, offensively, you want to see more than that.
Well, it was eliminated for the next 4 periods after that. I mean, they didn't go to the net. They didn't get rebounds. They didn't get deflections in front. And that's, you know, I mean, as Matthew Pistilli said, as the season goes on, that's what's going to be key. I mean, it's going to be gritty hockey, period. And you might as well get used to it and accept it and try to produce that.
When you take a look at the game on Saturday, though, against Toledo, we knew it's a rivalry game coming in. These guys are jockeying for the #1 spot. How impressed were you with the way that the Komets responded in the third period?
Oh, very impressed. But, I mean, like we said, we knew that's how they had to play. Everybody seemed to know that, and Gary kept preaching that. It finally had to get through, and maybe they got desperate enough where they listened, and it got through because they changed it dramatically. I mean, Toledo was just basically forcing them to dump and chase by setting up 5 guys across the red line sometimes, and so they had to dump and chase. Well, they weren't getting it back, you know, because they weren't paying the price to get in there and get it.
Pistilli, a huge game against Toledo. Talk about where he's evolved and his role on this year's team as it continues. It seems like it continues to grow for him.
Well, since the first game of the season in Indianapolis, remember it was his birthday, it was Schrock's birthday, they both scored. I mean, he really took over leadership parts then, and he's maintained that since. Now, the thing I like about Matt is Matt has the talent to score individually. He has the shot. He has the best shot on the team. But sometimes he's the one he's kind of stubborn. You want him to be kind of stubborn, kind of selfish as the best shooter. But sometimes it works against him because he's got to realize, okay, that's not working. I got to get in there, you know. And that's kind of what happened Saturday. But he always gets it. It may take him a little bit, but he eventually gets it.
It kind of sounds like what we talked about with Colin Chalk in years past, where it's like, maybe you need to be shooting it a little bit more, and you know, don't be so nice sometimes.
No, Matt always gets his shots. It's just that sometimes he settles for outside shots, and you know, and he has a wicked outside shot, so it's not as much as bad as settling as, say, Schrocky or Perlini or somebody else who doesn't get a lot of shots, you know. But I mean, he eventually figures it out.
Gary loves to say,
very smart player.
Gary loves to say getting greasy goals.
Yes,
and that's what they're looking for. You mentioned Keighley Schrock just a little while ago. The return of Keighley, I know we've talked about it quite a bit the last couple of weeks, where he's at, what he's going to bring when he is back, because the 3 facial fractures, not exactly you know, a twisted ankle or anything like that, especially considering the way he plays. So what did you see from Keighley this past weekend, and what do you think we can expect from him in the future? Because he seemed like he hit the ground running pretty well.
I saw 2 really interesting things that you can measure that don't show up on the score sheet. I saw him covering up for teammates who lost their defensive assignment right in front of the net a couple times, where he would go in and take the puck away before it could get to the guy. I also saw, you know how Anthony Marici, the big goal scorer for Toledo, has like 5 goals in 4 games coming in. Well, they're all from the same spot. They're all at the bottom of the circle on the power play. Well, what I saw the Komets do is they put Schrock and Severin out there and had them cheat down. So even if he got the puck, he couldn't release the shot. And I thought that was really interesting and something that only those 2 are really quick enough to be able to do. And they used it mostly with Schrocky because of his speed. You know, I mean, his speed, it was such a key in that area.
A lot of movement up and down, signings, trades this week for the Komets. The roster is always in flux every week, but this week more so than perhaps in weeks past. They add defenseman Dylan Quayle, the loss of Joey Leach, James Martin up to the AHL's Lake Erie Monsters. We don't know how long that's going to be.
Yeah, and they got it late, so they didn't have a whole ton of time to figure it out.
Right before the weekend. 2 critical home games. So talk about where they are at in terms of defensemen, because we'll go over the forwards here in just a minute.
Okay, well, with Leach and Martin in Lake Erie, haven't heard anything yet if they're coming back. I thought Quay, I thought he played fairly well. I mean, when you're coming in, you just don't want to screw up. I mean, he was minus, I believe he was even for the weekend for the one game. I mean, and he was fine. He was serviceable, and that's really all you can hope to be. You haven't had any practices with him or anything. I mean, you don't know the system, you don't know your partner, you don't know what the forwards are. I thought that was great. I mean, and that was really good for him. The rest of them, I thought Bartow really struggled Friday night, and he stepped up great on Saturday night. And same with Cody Saul. I mean, Cody's been he's been hitting the dead days a little bit, but he was really great Saturday night and really played well. And Drew Daniels, I mean, you get the same game from Drew every game, which is amazing that he's that consistent.
That was the guy I was going to touch on.
I thought Matt Krug played well this weekend.
So it's Quai.
I believe it's Quai.
Okay.
As in the bridge over the river.
Oh, well done. For you film buffs out there. Taking a look at the forwards, though, adding Brock Higgs, that was a move this week, and also the big move is getting Matt Lowry, center from Evansville, and trading Mr. Frazee down the river to the Evansville Icemen.
There you go.
What? I mean, that's what it was.
Do we get brownie points for these?
There you go. Matt Lowry, what does he bring? Because, I mean, we got to see him this week.
Yeah, it was interesting because Friday night he was lost. And I think he would agree with that in some respects and it wasn't anything he was doing wrong. It was like you're out there with Sedlowski and Embach, who both play like centers. You know, they're not wingers. They're all over the place. They got the puck. They're in this corner. They're in the middle. You know, it's all over the place. If you don't know them, you don't know where they're going to be, and I don't know how you play with them on a one-game basis.
Right.
I mean, Severin works with them because he's a left wing, even though he's playing center with them. But I thought Lowry really did a great job figuring it out in one game, which is almost impossible to do. I mean, he came in off the wing more often than not, which is where you would see Eric Fye come. That's where Aaron Clark came last year a lot. Even though they're centers, they don't play the traditional center role with those two.
Well, talking about the forwards, it looks like Crowder might be back sometime soon, so tell us
He'll be back Friday.
Yeah, Paul Crowder, where is he at physically, and what can you expect from him?
He's getting there. He's not 100% yet, but he's just going to have to go in some ways and see how it goes. But that's going to be huge on the power plays. Oh, my gosh, is that going to be big on face-offs? I mean, that's the biggest weakness they got right now. Is face-offs. And that's going to be huge because their whole game plan is set up on it. It's puck possession, it's puck positioning on the ice, it's all that. So, I mean, and Crowder makes you 25% better right there all by that, just by winning face-offs.
I know. He seems like an undersung guy.
Oh.
Maybe that, people aren't going to recognize the impact that he has.
But all you got to do is watch when he's got the puck, the whole game slows down. I mean, it's like everybody on defense is like, oh, crap, where's he going? Because they don't know where he's going. And he'll go back to the defense if it sets up the guy on the wing open over there. I mean, he's really smart and really good at that. And, usually you see younger players, they all make mistakes because they go too fast. They don't realize how much time they have. Paul always knows how much time he has, and that allows him to make plays that others don't.
Well, taking a look at this week's schedule, Friday at Kalamazoo, Saturday home against KZoo, and then a home against Al Sims and the Evansville Icemen again. These are teams that, if you're in first place, you should win 2 of these 3 this weekend.
Yeah, and Kalamazoo's playing great, though. I mean,
they've in the last month they've added some pieces.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what you expect to see in these 2 games specifically against Kalamazoo Friday, Saturday.
Well, the Komets lost last time against Kalamazoo, and it was because Kalamazoo quit trying to skate with the Komets. They just tried to get gritty and clog the neutral zone and slow them down, and it worked. So the Komets they've got this theme going on right now where everybody's trying to clog them up and slow them down. And it'll be interesting to see how the Komets react after the Toledo game. What did they learn from that? Because that's what Toledo tried to do after they got the 2-0 lead. So what did they learn from that they can use in these other games?
The final thing I really want to touch on today is the Stanford rating, because it comes up every week. It comes out new, and you see, even when the Komets were leading Toledo in the standings, they were behind them in the Stanford rating. So talk a little bit about what goes into that and why. Right now, Toledo's first in the league. The Komets are third. Why that is, Florida second. Why the Stanford rating is as it is, with the Komets always trailing Toledo.
Essentially what it is it's a combination of the opponent's records every time you play them. It's a tabulation of that, what opponents have the best records against you, that kind of thing. The Komets get hurt because they play Kalamazoo 15 times and Indy 11 and Evansville 11. They only play Toledo 6. Like if you played Toledo 11, 12 times, you'd have a much better overall strength of schedule. But whenever they play Indianapolis and Evansville now, the Komets don't get any points off of that. Now, Evansville and Indy do because the Komets are so high.
Right.
They're so far above them. But the Komets don't get any credit, essentially, as you build the strength of schedule.
And Toledo will play teams further either.
They play Cincinnati, Wheeling, Reading a lot more, that kind of thing.
And so strength of schedule is a huge part, essentially, of what the Stanford rating entails.
I mean, and that's why I keep pushing. They've got to play Toledo more. The schedule has to be set up that way. I mean, it's 90 minutes away, and Fort Wayne only played there 3 times this year, and they're done. And that's crazy. That's just wrong. You know, I mean, it helps both franchises because the fan bases travel so well, too. You know, I mean, it makes economic sense. It makes competitive sense, you know, but it doesn't make minor league hockey sense.
I mean, Evansville's in the state, but it's about as far away as you can get still being in the state of Indiana.
And look at Cincinnati, too. I mean, they haven't played them that much. I mean, I forget what Nick Brunker, their radio guy, even looks like. You know, I mean, they haven't played them, and they could end up playing in the playoffs. You know, it just doesn't make sense the way some of this stuff is put together.
Don't you think part of that will be rectified next season?
Oh, it didn't get rectified this year.
Well,
they just put the schedule from last year over this year and said, let's redo it.
But they knew they were going to have an influx of some CHL teams.
Yeah, I get that.
This past Friday, we learned a little bit about some changes that are going to be happening in the ECHL. Feel like there'll be less up in the air?
You're
or is
thinking
it just
logically, Glenn. This doesn't work logically.
I haven't covered the ECHL as long as you have.
It doesn't work logically. Minor league hockey's never logical.
Well, I mean, it should be easier next year, which means it won't be.
Well, yeah, they always take the harder way. I mean, that's just the way it goes. I mean, it just is baffling sometimes.
Yeah, Toledo only 6 games this year.
Right. Do you realize the Komets are going to see Greenville as much almost as they're going to see some of the teams in their division? How does that make sense? They've already seen them more than they've seen Cincinnati.
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
I don't know, but it makes for interesting playoffs.
But you play Kalamazoo 15 times.
Only 15
Only
times.
15 times.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you play them in the play, you're going to see them 22 times possibly in a season. How does that make any sense economically, competitively, anything?
I don't know. They don't. That's above my pay grade. And
how does that serve your customers?
I'm not 100% sure.
It doesn't.
I don't have the answer.
Again,
I'm the guy that asked the question.
Again, like I keep saying, the ECHL priority is not their customers. That's what drives you nuts.
That's true. That's true. They got bigger guys to make sure are happy above. I guess that'll do it for this week's edition of Inside the Zone. We'll try to get less fired up next week, although you probably wouldn't watch it then. He's Blake, I'm Glenn, and we'll see you next Monday.